please give a warm welcome to one of Brazil's greatest actors, Fernanda Torres, and director Walter Salles.
Thank you, Walter.
What an honor to have you both here. My goodness. Walter, this film is all about reconstructing memory. And I was astounded by the first 30 minutes of the film. Can you walk us through your choices, the fluidity of the camera work, the choice of 35 millimeter and Super 8, the way you created those first 30 minutes that bring life to this world?
Good evening. Boa noite. Such a joy to be here, Roger. Thank you so much to be back. I had the luck of knowing this family and being in that house when I was 13 years old. And what I remember from it was the extraordinary life that blossomed in that house. I remember the luminosity of the house. The windows were constantly open. There was no key in the door. And different groups intermingled into that. 5 kids, father and mother, all with their friends. Wow. So I didn't get to that place once where I didn't meet 5 or 6 new friends, you know? So there was a joy in it that I wanted to actually portray in the beginning of the film. That was so important, and thank you for this wonderful question, because for me this was always about that joy that was robbed from that family, you know? Mm-hmm. And the fluidity of the camera mirrors what I remember, the memory that I have from this place where there was constant music, that people exchanged ideas, intermingled. There was something contagious about it, you know? Mm-hmm. Therefore, this kind of very fluid camera going back and forth from group to group. The other thing that was very much in my mind was the how do I say that in English?
Say it in Portuguese.
The immediacy of everything. That there was an immediacy about it, and this is why the Super 8 is there.
There is the 35 gives us texture.
Absolutely, because that throws you, the 35 roots the film in the 70s without any artificiality. You don't need to bring, you know, the fake digital grain to it. You don't need to add a texture that isn't there. It just is, you know. And as we used 500 ASA film, then the grain is even more present. Mm-hmm. And that was so important to give a sense, almost a smell to that place, you know, mm-hmm. to that house. And as we filmed chronologically, we used the house to rehearse at the beginning. And we cooked in that house, and when we lived in that house. So when Marcelo, the kid who then wrote the book that the film is based upon, when he came to the house, he said, "It smells like the old house," you know. And so there was something about this that the film had to have a dramatic structure, but it had to have another level that blended with it, which was a sensorial level. And this is where the 35 and the Super 8 come in.
What I remember about the 70s in Brazil is that it was, architecture was so important. Music, you know, it was, the music was everything culturally about Brazil was so exciting in the 70s, and you recreated in those 30 minutes. You mentioned the sound, the sensory aspect. We listen to music. You dwell on the architecture of the house, and you start on the beach, and you take us to inside the house. Tell us about bringing all the different cultural aspects of Brazil at the time.
I think that in that house pulsated the possibility of another country, a country we wanted to be part of, with a new architecture, the architecture of Brasilia, for instance, the Niemeyer architecture, new music from Caetano Veloso, Gilberto Gil, and everybody that you listen in there. It's called the Tropicalia movement. The Cinema Novo, the new cinema that was blossoming. All of that, of course, was somehow censored at the during the military dictatorship, but it was still alive in that house, And we embraced it because that family embraced it. We tried to revive it and to bring that back to the screen. And one thing that we really tried to do was not to see a family from the outside. I really wanted to invite you to be with that family for the length of a film, It's interesting going from festival to festival. A lot of people said, I didn't have the impression I saw a film, and that is a beautiful compliment because we didn't construct it in a way that it felt, theatrically. Like there's not an obvious construction. There's just something that reminds us of life blossoming on the street, on the screen. The sounds were part of that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
The sound is so much part of that. The sound coming from the beach, the sound of nature, but the sound also of the cars circling around, the sound of the friends, all the everything that's swirling around that house, started to lay out a kind of a memory, memória sonora. How do you say that? A sound memory of that space, which is going to disappear once the house is occupied by the military around minute 30. All of that is going to be subtracted.
Well, I was astonished by what were you just saying, the idea of memory being brought back. When I watch your film, it just dawned on me, this is what cinema is all about. It's about recreating memory on the screen. And the specificity of the world that you create, it speaks about Brazil in a universal way. Were you conscious of that aspect, how narrow, but that you were speaking about the whole country as well?
Yeah, it really dawned on me when I read the book on which the film is based that in reconstructing his family's memory, Marcelo also offered the possibility to reconstruct a country's memory. And the question, it really nails it because it's because of this blend of the personal story and the collective story that we did the film. It's beautiful when those two things merge, the possibility to talk about a family that somehow echoes, a country or a culture in movement, an identity in movement. And this family had offered that possibility for us to dive into.
Fernanda, your performance is astonishing. And it's...
Thank you, Walter, so much.
What I was blown away about things that you did, for example, she never does the things that I expect her to do. I'm thinking in particular the moment after she comes back from jail and she goes to the mirror and she looks at herself, her daughter is screaming, and there's no self-pity. she, can you tell us about that scene and her choices?
That it's not even choices, I think. From the beginning, Walter created this possibility of not having to act. It's something very strange, just to be. And Eunice, she never made any drama with her life, and she had a tragic life. And we wanted to be very faithful to this woman because we couldn't make a melodrama out of her life. This woman never showed self-pity. She was always inteira, like there, with a smile, rational, very sweet, but very persuasive, very strong. So that was, I kept watching like her interviews, and I said, how can I make it? Because she would say terrible things about the accident of Marcelo, and she would say it in a rational, gentle, and warm way. Was something that I've never saw. And Walter, he really allowed me to, first by being in that house, living in that house, he created not a set, but the memory of the house that he once was invited to be there. So the smell was unbelievable in that house. In the beginning, when you say that party, they're all our friends. We're having parties. And as we're shooting chronologically, one day Selton was taken away. And I remember I thought, Selton won't be here tomorrow. So there was this mixture between my experience as an actress and what happened to Eunice. Then I was taken to that prison, and I was missing that house. Then in the bathroom, when I went back to that house and I knew I had to look to myself in that mirror, I said, what am I going to do? Nothing. I just have to have confidence that Eunice is here. And I will just look in the mirror because there is something different in me after taking so much time in that prison. So I've never felt it, because normally in films we have codes of acting. So you scream, you do a great scene crying, but Eunice didn't allow us to do it. It was a very strange. I think I'm a different actress today. Because in a way I have Eunice with me. I can access her forever, I think, now.
Well, what am I wrong to say that mirror scene is the big pivotal moment in the movie that...
I think so. The mirror scene and the scene in the ice cream place after she discovered that Rubens is no more. And I remember that I prepared myself to do that scene, and we had to cross a square to go to the set. And I could feel like the burden. I put my costume, and then I went there, and this thing about restraining something, an emotion, it becomes so much strong in you. Mm-hmm. And then you allow the audience to feel for you, to have empathy for you, because you are not doing the job for the audience. And after doing that scene, I went to a corner, and I think I cried for 5 minutes alone to relieve that and go back home. So it was really deep. Mm-hmm. It's something that I never worked with before.
Mm-hmm. Tagging to what she said about not allowing emotions, visually, you don't dwell on emotions either. I noticed that you don't do zooms. You let the film just be. can you tell us about it? A different director would have zero in on the melodrama and the emotions. You stand back. Can you tell me about that choice?
Yeah, another great question.
It's
Thank you so much.
unbelievable.
Well, thank you.
We need to take you with us in all venues from now on. We're gonna steal Roger
Yeah.
from Santa Barbara. We
Take
have to
him.
apologize for you in advance.
Thank you. You're making me self-conscious, but please let
Well,
me.
the whole thing about I think this film was not to fill the presence of and it was just about finding the essence of things from the beginning to the end and never be noticeable. There's no close-ups in the film except for one close-up, which is
When she closes the...
yeah, when she's putting the death certificate there, and Eunice leans towards the camera. That is, the camera doesn't go to her. You go to the camera, and this is the only close-up in the film, in fact. When you're dealing with tragedy, you don't want to enhance it. You shouldn't enhance it to start with. I think that the film, from the moment the military police in civilian clothes enters in there, the film becomes a film about subtraction. We subtract light. When they close the windows, the curtains. We subtract the sounds referred to in the beginning. The sounds get muffled as the house is being closed. And the turntable doesn't have music anymore. And then there's something that happens also is that language is affected because you can't talk freely anymore. Somebody's listening at what you're saying. So you have to look at each other's eyes to understand what is happening. So the film becomes, from that moment on, much more subjective and almost impressionistic in nature because it's a non-verbal, essentially. So when you're Jean-Luc Godard, who has a good sentence about everything in cinema, he says that cinema is about subtraction. And I had never completely understood how you can exercise it until this film. And it's about not enhancing emotion because it's so blatantly there that it would be almost unethical to kind of pursue emotion, And this has to do with acting. It's Fernanda acted in. There's something always brewing brewing inside of your Eunice, but it never spills. And I think it's so beautiful. How do you say, the bandwidth for that? There's not an enormous amount of latitude, but your Eunice contains multitudes within that latitude. That was so beautiful to see. To see as a director that was there. That there was this richness, this different layers, but in that very restrained, form of acting, and that ended up creating the possibility to find, I would say, a palette in the acting for the whole film.
Why was it essential for you to shoot chronologically?
Because there was no other way.
And children, I think. When I did Central Station, I also filmed as chronologically as I could because you don't want to say to children that they're going to lose a parent in the middle of the film. What you want to share with the child is exactly what's going to happen on that day, on the day that that you're shooting that specific scene, so that their minds are not impregnated by what will happen, but they are just in the moment, which is what we were aiming for, So they were there, to use a Meissner quote, living under imaginary circumstances,
Correct.
And having fun, and experiencing that moment to the fullest. That was about That you see.
Yeah, of course.
So it would have been very difficult to shoot with the children out of order. And one example that you always
Me
give.
included.
No, it's for instance the youngest girl, Babiou, at the very end when she is looking at the house and the house is being dismantled just before they leave to São Paulo. You know, and she's taken by emotion. She was really taken by emotion. We were not shooting that, and I realized that she was really moved by the fact that the house was being dismantled, and there was a blend of, I think, of the understanding of what the character is going to miss, you know, and what she was going to miss
Was
because
her
that was the
last day of shooting.
and that shot is a stolen shot, you know. It just then the documentarist in me just, you know, we just brought the camera and very delicately shot that moment, you know, and it's a take one, and then the scene of the thief is constructed on top of that, you see, but had we shot out of order, we would never get accidents, beautiful accidents like this, you know, and life wouldn't come to the surface as it did many times during the film.
Fernanda, your performance is so nuanced from just watching your body when, as the movie progresses, even if we didn't have the makeup to see you aging, you change yourself physically. When you come back from prison, you're different. The way you handle your body is complete. Tell us about calibrating the physicality of the performance.
Because, I don't know, the story of Eunice, I think it's the story of someone, this perfect housewife from the 50s. That's how she started. I love it. She takes the coffee, she puts the children in bed. Of course, she's a good wife, very intelligent one. But then one day, and she has friends and she cooks, and one day she's like ran over by the Cold War. I mean, this woman was hit by history with capital H. And the utopia, the naivete, she's not allowed to be naive anymore. And at the same time, she was in fear. So she was not breathing. The emotions start to change your body. Then when you are taken to a policeman and this very intelligent guy starts to ask questions to you, and in the middle of the interrogatorio, the questioning, she discovers that her husband was doing something that she didn't know. This is so complicated. I mean, he was betraying her in a way. And she discovers that in front of that man. And so it starts to act in your body. That woman, the perfect housewife, starts to disappear and you become something else. Mm-hmm. And then you discover that you have, like in a good tragedy, to go on. And then she starts to recover her spine. But you don't say, here I will recover my spine. It's something that you don't do it before. You just do it by doing it. And that's why it would be impossible to shoot it like, today's the party, and everybody's partying and having fun. Now, you were very sad because, I mean, you lost your husband. It would be impossible. He really allowed us to live this. And I stayed with Eunice under my skin for almost a year. At the end, I still can access her, really, because it's like having lived with another soul. It was really deep. So you don't plan, you see, everything. And when I watched the movie, I started to cry, and I was like, my God, it doesn't look like me.
No.
And then I was like, but my God, it's so honest. Not only me, everybody. Everything was so honest. And at the middle, I thought, but Walter disappeared in this movie. He's not showing off. I mean, nobody will notice that he was directing this movie because it looks like real life. And this is very rare and subtle to achieve.
She reinvents herself. How you lived with her? How was she able to so forcefully reinvent herself?
I have no idea. It's unbelievable. And she never had the necessity of being recognized by what she did. She was first the widow of Rubens and then the mother of Marcelo. There is an interview in a very famous TV show, and Marcelo was releasing his first book when he became a star. And she was there, and Marcelo could not be, and this Marília Gabriela, she comes and say, oh, but you are the mother of this wonderful writer, and you are a lawyer, right? And she said, yes. But do you work as a lawyer? And she was like defending the indigenous reserves with Sting and Raoni, doing very important. And she says, yes. You see, she doesn't say, of course I do. Sting calls me every day with Raoni because we're like defending the... This was so strange. Very amazing woman.
Wow. Walter, I gotta ask you about the opening. At the beginning of the movie, we have the meal with all of them together, and then you bookmark the end of the film with a meal that, they mirror each other. Can you tell us about cinematically having those two mirrors?
Yes, with pleasure. Especially because the first one is an improvisation, a complete improvisation. The beauty of doing a film as we did chronologically and rehearsing and having the correct temperature. I would say, let me drift for just a little bit. Tarkovsky, the great Russian director, he used to say that a film only happens if everybody in front of the camera and behind the camera are in the same artery, are in the artery of the film. And I think that at that point we had found the artery of the film. And this is what allowed us to improvise. After the dance scene, which was quite wonderful to shoot, there was such a climate for for something that wasn't in the screenplay, and this is when we came up with that possibility to do that first, the very first dinner scene, was a lunch scene. Everything is a take one.
Wow.
So it goes from it. We never repeated that. It's just it goes from one angle, then the camera moves. Everything is a take one. Then this is when we created the second one, so that you would have that circular structure, and therefore we incorporated a second lunch scene so that it would mirror the improvised scene.
Oh, okay.
And what is interesting about that second scene is that half of the persons that you see on screen are actors, real actors, and the other half are members of the real family.
Oh, wow.
But they are all in the same frequency.
And you include the great Fernanda Montenegro in that scene, which is like, it's such a incredible moment in cinema to have the Fernanda Torres, and then all of a sudden we have Fernanda Montenegro. How did that come about? Two of Brazil's greatest actors.
I was not his first pick. But you tell me.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that how lucky can you be to have two Fernandas in the same film? Yeah, that's
Playing
But
the
you
same
know,
character.
Yes.
it adds something. This film is, as, for instance, Walter was in that house, and in a way he made this film to recreate that house. And this is such a metaphor for cinema. And at the same time, my mother, it's about a family that endures through love, affection, art, and intelligence, and smiling through a very dark moment of our history. And in a way, my mother and me, we represent it. Or my mother and I never know. Because, I mean, the fact that I exist and she exists means that art has endured. And she passed me something. As Eunice passed something to Marcelo. The way Marcelo reacted to the accident he had, and he wrote that book, started when this woman back there said, "We will smile, and we won't be victims." And the way I was raised in a family of artists that was very attacked during the dictatorship and later, and we have endured, and my mother and my father had created me. This is the country. This is art enduring, and it's what the film is about. So there are so many layers. This guy who discovered Brazil in that house, and then suddenly he reopens that house through cinema, and he says something wonderful about what is happening now in Brazil. Please, Walter, I won't steal what you...
What Fernanda is referring to is that there's a lot of people from different generations going to see the film in Brazil right now. You know, so they are the cinemas are full, and we are even a little bit flabbergasted with them. I mean, it's such a gift to see that the cinemas can be full again. And they're there to have a collective experience. And today, you know, in talking. In an interview, it dawned on me that, in fact, the kind of this encounter of generations that are in the center of the film, the initial 30 minutes, you know, where people exchange experiences and lived with passion, you know. This is somehow being replicated in the movie theaters now, as people go and have the experience of the film itself, you know, and go through the emotions that the film offers. You know, it's very interesting. For me, it's this house that is somehow being reopened in the movie theaters, you know, and
Yeah.
For the collective experience.
Because of what you're saying, you're giving me permission to ask you a complicated question. You did Foreign Land with Fernanda Torres, which dealt, in my view, dealt with the Collor government, and then you also did Central Station, which dealt with the Collor government. But that's more recent history of Brazil. What you're dealing with now is far in the back. Ultimately to you is what took you so long to deal with that dictator, with that period?
It's my generation of filmmakers, when we arrived at the point where we started to do fiction, the country had just recovered, became a democracy again after 21 years of dictatorship. We were the longest dictatorship in South America. And as we were reaching that point, the natural cinematographic, filmic gesture would be to look towards that recent past. But the present was so chaotic that we had to offer a reflection of that moment. That's a moment where, due to the economic chaos with which the military and then the first president left Brazil, 1 million Brazilians fled from the country, and we did a film about that.
Yeah, foreign land.
Foreign land, and so I didn't manage to look, in that direction. Although I had a project with your mother at that point that ended up not being possible. We didn't get the rights for that, which was about that period. The first project I had with Fernanda Montenegro that
about another great heroine from that time,
yeah.
a mother who lost a son in the same situation as Rubens.
But we didn't get the rights for that. But and so therefore foreign land. But now I felt the urge to go back there to better understand where we come from, and as the project. As it took us a long time to get to the right screenplay, the country changed so rapidly as well that suddenly those times were kind of back on our
coming back with
coming
Bolsonaro.
back and kind of knocking on the door, and we realized that the film was not only about the past, but was also about the present in many ways, really about what we were seeing and fearing, and in the middle of that, the pandemic, with the denial of the pandemic, Brazil refused to have vaccines for a long time. This is why we have the highest number of deaths in the world per 1,000 of inhabitants, and so it was very traumatic, and then we realized that the film was about the present as well, and that made us focus even more so to do the film.
And also there was the book. And he started to write the book because she was losing her memory, and he thought, I better write about it. And she was losing the memory of what she lived. At the same time that the country was losing the memory of this recent past, or not so recent, but recent past. So that's why he wrote it. So it's this cycle that comes every 20 years or 30 years that we have to rethink again what happened and why we didn't choose those paths, but
Correct.
we keep forgetting.
Well,
and then also this movie is beautiful. Selton said a beautiful thing once, because the body of Rubens Paiva was never returned. Never. This family. And one day Selton was watching and said, Nanda, this film is the body of Rubens Paiva. Is the proof that he existed.
correct.
Is the concrete proof in 35 millimeters, not even digital. It has a body.
Yeah. Well, this is by far one of my favorite movies this year, and one of my favorite performances. Yeah,
Thank you
it's
very much.
extraordinary what the two of you have done, and we're so privileged to have you here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pleasure
You were
to be here.
wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.